Hi everyone, this is Heather Lottinen from the Flourish.Academy. This is episode 538. Have you ever missed a focus? No? You get them all right? Well, I miss focus all the time. Obviously, the goal is to get as many photos as possible that are sharp and in focus. Well, I was working with a friend the other day. We were photographing a family together. She has a Nikon D750. She showed me a photo and she said, I don't know if it just feels like it's a little bit soft, or I'm not sure if it's totally in focus. I said, let me take a look. And I zoomed in and I said, oh gosh, you know what? This looks like the camera didn't even focus. May I play with it for a second? So when that happens, when it looks like the camera isn't focusing or something just feels really off, the very first thing I check on the D750 is that I didn't bump this switch from AF autofocus to manual. So, and by the way, don't just look at it. Actually physically switch it to manual and back to autofocus, because sometimes it gets stuck in the middle. So I checked that. I always check the side of the lens, the switch in the lens, to make sure. And I could not get her camera to focus. So I thought, okay, well, troubleshooting 101. I'm going to try a different lens. So she had on her 70-200. I grabbed mine, I put it on, couldn't get it to focus. I thought that's strange. So I turned off the camera. I popped out the card, popped out the battery, put those back in, switched it to another lens. Still not focusing. And I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, something is really, really wrong here. There are a lot of cameras that if that happened, I wouldn't be certain that I had checked everything. But in the case of a Nikon D750, I know this particular camera really, really well. And I thought, I've checked everything. So we're talking about this, and we're with a couple of other photographers, and you guys, this is hilarious. A solid 5 minutes go by of us trying to troubleshoot the camera. Finally, she says, would it be important to know that I use back button focus? Oh my gosh. Yeah, that information would have been useful 5 minutes ago. I pressed her back button and sure enough, the camera focused, which was hilarious. Okay, but that wasn't the point. The point was she still missed the focus on that particular image. Now, we have a whole course on making sure that your images are sharp and in focus. But I specifically today wanted to talk about two things: focus points, where the camera focuses, and focus mode, which is how the camera focuses. And there's a big difference, obviously. So on the D750, if I press this button and adjust my front command dial, I can change the focus points. So you can have either all of the focus points and allow the camera to select the one that it thinks should be in focus, the subject that is, or you can select the focus points. Now there are varying degrees of this, because there's like 3D tracking and groups, but I'm talking specifically about two things. Either you pick the focus point or the camera picks the focus point. So primarily when I'm photographing portraits and weddings, I choose the focus point. I can move the focus point around where I want it, or I can use focus recompose. So I choose the focus point. However, if I am in a situation with a lot of fast moving subjects, for me that would be, say, dancing at the reception, then I'll let the camera choose the focus points. But I understand that there are going to be a lot of missed shots because the camera is going to select wrong. Therefore, I feel personally like I have more control when I choose the focus points and I put it where I want it, or I just leave it in the center and I focus recompose. So that's where the camera focuses. The other thing is how the camera focuses. So there is continuous servo, which is when you press the button and the camera continues to focus. It hunts for a focus. You hold down the shutter halfway, boom, you take the photo. That's when it focuses. Versus single focus, single one shot, single servo, goes by a couple of different names. When you press the shutter button, it will focus one time, lock the focus. You could focus, recompose, and then take the photo. If my subject is still or relatively still, I will use single one-shot servo. You press halfway, locks the focus, and then you take the photo, especially if I'm going to focus and recompose. If my subject is moving a little more quickly than I would like, or walking around, or there's a lot of motion in general, I will then put it into continuous servo, where the camera will hunt, so I can kind of track and then take the photo when I like the composition or the placement. So again, continuous is continuously focusing. That's on the Nikon, it's called C for continuous servo. On the Canon, it's called, what do they call it on the Canon? Servo. The Canon has 3. Canon has AI servo, which is artificial intelligence, which means auto. The camera will pick either continuous or single, depending on what it thinks is happening. It's called one shot. Canon calls it one shot. Nikon calls it S for single servo, focuses one time, or C for continuous. AI focus on the Canon, or AI servo on the Canon, which is just continuous. The AI focus on the Canon, artificial intelligence focus, I would steer away from that. And the reason is this: the camera will choose what it thinks based on the situation, and you don't know what it picks. So then you never know if you were in continuous or if you're in one shot. I don't like that. I would rather either be in one shot or continuous, where it continuously focuses. Same with Nikon. Nikon has an auto mode where it will pick one or the other. Don't care for it. I personally spend probably 90% of my time in single or one shot because you have more control. When you pick the focus point and you are in single one shot, single servo, and it focuses one time, you have more control. When you have more control, you will typically end up with more photos that are in focus. That's not always the case when you have children running around or people dancing at the reception. In those cases, I will switch to continuous servo and all focus points, understanding that I'm going to have to shoot more to get the photo I want, because the camera is going to miss. It's going to miss the focus point where it might grab the dance floor instead of the people. It might grab the tree in the background instead of the child. And then continuous servo, because it's always hunting for a focus, it might just hit it at the wrong time when I take the photo. Therefore, again, because I'm wedding and portraits and I primarily deal with people who are still or relatively still, I'm going to stay in SS, is what I say. Single one shot and single focus point where I pick it. Now, okay, I say still or relatively still, and that's because if I have a slow dance or children just kind of meandering around, then I can still use those modes. I just need to focus and take the photo really quickly before they move, and I do. So I really only switch over to continuous if there's maybe children running towards me or just a lot of really fast action. These are personal preferences. I just find for myself that I get more photos in sharp, in focus, how I want them when I am using the focus point that I pick, where I place it, and single servo where it focuses one time. This operates differently if you are using back button focus, because if you hold down your back button to focus, you can keep it held down and it will operate like continuous, and it will continuously focus until you take the photo. I did, in fact, give back button focus a good fair shot a couple of years ago. I used it at a few weddings and for a few sessions just to try it out. Personally, I didn't like it. It didn't work for me. I know that the people who use it love it. Like, they're a little insane about it. They would never shoot any other way. It's the only way to shoot. There are different ways to shoot. You don't have to shoot like me. You don't have to shoot like them. Whatever works for you is fine. I personally could not get the hang of focusing and taking a photo. Like, those two movements just tripped me up all of the time. So I let my shutter button focus and I move on. However you shoot is fine. I think that when you're starting out, you probably should experiment with both to see what you like. There are sports photographers, people who photographed a lot of motion that swear by back button focus. Hey, that's great. That works for them. They almost have formed their own cult. Everybody has the back button focus. I don't care what you do, as long as you get a sharp photo. I'll see you in the next video.